Hey guys, before starting the show, I just want to take a minute to talk about our good friends over at Bitwise, the $10 billion global crypto asset manager. On this show, we talk a lot about all the big stories. What's driving markets? What does the data tell us? What are you people missing? And as you already know, crypto is playing a much bigger role in macro. So it's becoming more and more important to really understand the stories driving crypto. Why is Bitcoin going up? Why is Bitcoin going down? What are the institutions doing? What are people missing? That's why Bitwise launched the weekly CIO memo, a quick summary each week of what's really moving crypto markets. It's written by the CEO, Matt Hogan. Matt's one of the best in business at bridging the worlds of traditional finance and crypto. It's really a great read. It's clear, it's bold, and it's very thoughtful. I highly recommend it to anyone who wants the latest insights and hottest takes in the crypto world. So head on over to bitwiseinvestments.com/CIO memo. That's bitwiseinvestments.com/CIO memo. Check it out for yourselves. Always, of course, carefully consider the extreme risks associated with crypto.
Today's video is sponsored by VeChain, the leading layer 1 built for real-world adoption. VeChain launched all the way back in 2015, built for real-world utility before most people had even heard of blockchain. One of the oldest protocols and boasting 100% uptime since launch, it's known for powering real-world solutions and partnerships with global brands like the UFC. Now, they're entering a new, user-focused chapter powered by adoption in the VBetter ecosystem and an ambitious technical roadmap dubbed the VeChain Renaissance. Renaissance builds on VeChain's history of real utility and adoption to deliver a faster, more flexible core protocol, designed to meet the needs of builders and drive mass adoption. The next phase kicks off on July 1st with the launch of Stargate, VeChain's new staking program. It's an evolution that brings VeChain closer to delivering its vision of a world powered by Web3 without compromising on reliability or stability. The future is here, and it's scalable, sustainable, and evolving with purpose. Check the links in the description to find out all you need to know about VeChain Renaissance and the updated staking opportunities available through Stargate.
Hello out there, welcome to another edition of Macro Mondays. This is the last show before we embark on a short summer break. I'm recording from home this time and not from our offices, but you're working, busy being in the office. Andreas, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Mikkel. Final day at the office here for me before flying to Southern Europe. And for those of you familiar with the Southern European Wi-Fi connections, we cannot guarantee a live show out of Portugal or an island in Italy or whatever. So that's why we're recording up front here.
Yeah, I'm technically going to Africa, the Canary Islands, so that might be even worse, even though usually it's quite decent. So Andreas, so that's why we're recording this a little bit in advance. To be completely transparent, we're recording this on Friday. So if things turn south over the weekend, you'll know why. That we'll probably do another show, whatever. But anyway, Andreas, we are officially in the banana zone. Things started to move yesterday. I don't know if we are at that exact point, as you see here in the banana zone, but what do you make of it? Bitcoin just going above 118, at 117 right now. Might be even more when you listen to this. What's your overall take on this, Andreas?
Was it exactly a week ago where we talked about a different banana, Mikkel? I'm actually a little bit surprised by the timing. I'm not surprised by the direction of travel. I'm not surprised that we're going higher. Through July, it's been, well flagged by us and several others here at Real Vision. But why did we suddenly break higher Thursday, Friday? Maybe the first catalyst was actually the 50% tariff threat versus Brazil. At least it coincided, that big spike in Bitcoin Thursday, with that announcement. And does that make sense to an extent? Yes, sure it does, because, from what we can gather from various flow statistics and holding statistics, if you're a millionaire or even a billionaire in Brazil, Mexico, or other LATAM countries, you're very, very inclined to be a Bitcoin holder.
Fair point.
And obviously, we saw a big response in the Brazilian real to this 50% tariff threat. So this is a way of protecting your wealth as a LATAM, wealthy millionaire, billionaire, whatever. So I actually think there is some merit to the view right now that there is a connection between tariffs and Bitcoin. And it's kind of odd, but I have to say it like this. Maybe tariffs are even slightly bullish for this case, at least if tariffs target countries where you're inclined to buy, for example, Bitcoin as some sort of monetary hedge.
Yeah. So even my struggling Pepe holdings are looking very, very good right now, Andreas. So a very, very great start to this vacation. We're going to talk much more on tariffs. We're going to talk a little bit about Russia. We're going to talk a lot about China. You had some interesting takes there I want to bring up, Andreas. But first, let's go through some of the laughs and hot takes that we've encountered on the week in macro, Andreas. Obviously, this is just a classic. But you feel it when you work as we do across continents. We have partners with Real Vision in Asia, Europe. You just feel this. This is so true. I mean, the European out of office, I'm away camping for the summer. Please email back in September. That's the feeling you get sometimes, that people are off during July and August. Whereas Americans, I mean, we discussed this with our great producer Brian here at Real Vision, that we were going to take 1 week off here, and he was shocked almost. so that's just a huge difference, and it's this is very, very true. We're taking 1 week off, so we're not going all European, but yeah, still a little bit of a vacation there, Andreas. And then another topic that hit this week, and I don't know if there's a macro angle to this, but it was just too funny, Andreas. Grok, the big AI gamble from Elon Musk, went Nazi essentially. Mega Hitler. It started praising Adolf Hitler. It started pushing conspiracy theories left and right. And there's actually a precedent to this. Did you know that? I may have told you the story before. Have you ever heard about Microsoft Tay?
No.
Back in 2016, Microsoft tried to launch sort of a very early large language model that operated on what was then Twitter. So it would engage in discussions with users, completely AI-driven, pick up on people's inputs, etc., and sort of develop from there. And within 24 hours, Microsoft Tay had turned into a fierce Nazi as well. I brought some stuff along here. Did the Holocaust happen? No, completely made up. Do you support genocide? I do indeed. So this was back in 2016. 9 years ago, the first attempts at sort of an AI-driven Grok. Exactly the same thing happened. Turned completely Nazi. It's I don't know what to make of this. We're still a couple of years away from AI taking over the world, hopefully.
But Mikkel, I think this is. Isn't it a testimony to what's called Godwin's law? That, the longer an online discussion grows, the probability of some sort of comparison to Hitler or Nazis approaches 1. That is Godwin's law. And if you look at, Reddit and various commentary sections across the board, it doesn't take that long for someone to bring that up.
Absolutely.
If your model is trained on, commentary threats on X, I get why it turns into a Nazi at some point. Never mind. It is obviously amusing and something that they'll have to deal with fairly fast, given the valuation, the price point of XAI.
Yeah, absolutely, Andreas. So that's one of the hot takes. I want to get your take on this, Andreas. This is from Spencer Hakimian on X. He noted that Nasdaq futures started aggressively selling off at 7:52 p.m. Then Trump announced, and we'll get back to the contents of this announcement, new tariff levels, or threatened new tariff levels at 8:06, so 14 minutes later, and Nasdaq bottomed off at 8:10. Was Pete Hegseth live trading? What do you make of this, or is this just a coincidence?
I don't know whether they have a signal threat with these warnings as well. I honestly think, Mikkel, that we have quite a few clues of front running of various political messages from the Trump administration, not least in crypto space, which is also why I'm still fairly comfortable with the outlook, given that Bitcoin and crypto is doing much better than equities as we speak. So I think there is some merit to this view. I think it's the first time that we actually see it to any major extent in the big equity indices. Yeah. We've seen it in crypto. For example, on the day where the B-2 bombers headed to Iran, we had a steep decline all the way from the morning in ETH, SUI, etc. And in my opinion, it was, pretty decent hint that someone knew. And obviously, a lot of people were in the know. I don't know whether Pete Hex had texted a journalist this time around, but I have to admit that this is something that you just have to, for some reason, accept as a reality in U.S. politics. It's not like the Democrats were any better. And yeah, you know how Nancy has been one of the better traders in recent years as well. So
yeah.
It's one of the things that I will, and as a European, I'll never learn to understand this conceptually. No. Because if this had happened in Northern Europe, we would simply have thrown people out of office.
Absolutely.
That would have
absolutely
happened. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, still as an investor, the fact that this is going on to whatever extent it's going on gives me a lot of comfort, because all of these guys are holding are major crypto holders. So this gives me a lot of confidence then that if things turn south for Bitcoin, etc., you have a lot of holders in government willing to back that. Okay, Andreas, let's move on to some of the charts of the week. Should we take the China story that you posted? I think it was yesterday.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've obviously had these almost cry wolf stories out of China quite a few times since the autumn of 2024, related to stimulus and debt issuance aimed at underpinning the property sector and all of that. I think there is finally some merit to that story now. And why is that? Well, if you look at the backdrop from a macroeconomic perspective now in China, we're in a much better place when you look at key variables that they track in financial markets. So if you're the Chinese Politburo or the Chinese central bank and you want to stimulate, you obviously dislike if the dollar is very strong going into such a stimulus package, as if, a stimulus package will most likely on the margin weaken your currency, right? Because you issue more debt and you print. And when the dollar traded at 730 versus the yuan, and the central bank had to intervene daily, you don't have a lot of leeway to stimulate, really, because the currency is too weak already. And now the dollar is the weak part. At least it's been, trending weaker and weaker and weaker since New Year's, more or less. And that's a game changer for China, because it actually allows them to stimulate without compromising the FX question. And I think that is one of the, main takeaways for the second half of the year, that China is now in a position where it can actually stimulate. And given bond yields, they're already trading at very low levels in China. They have plenty of room, and it's not even expensive for them. So I think that could be a major story for the second half of the year, Chinese stimulus, meaning that you can buy, industrial metals linked to the Chinese cycle and all of that.
We have the chart here. We can just show on iron ore, I believe it is, the commodity breaking out of the wedge, as you described it. Is that where are you looking at the commodity or the miners? What are you looking at?
I think iron ore is a super interesting case. We obviously also had the tariffs case on copper, leading COMEX copper to explode to the upside last week. One that we flagged for the pro subscribers at Real Vision, and made people a truckload of money on that trade. I think iron ore is the next trade here, in relation to the business cycle. Broadly speaking, commodities will do very well in this kind of environment, and we're in that phase of the economic cycle where technology and commodities can do well in tandem, which is, slightly counterintuitive, but you can get that kind of scenario when you go from a contraction to an expansion in the manufacturing sector, and that's exactly the crossroads we're at.
Christoph, Andreas, great analysis here. You can check out the full-fledged analysis piece with the Real Vision Pro subscription at Real Vision. So, Andreas, I just want to move on to going back to Trump. Obviously, that is the nature of this show, I guess, Andreas. We touched a little bit up on his announcements on the tariffs issue that caused a lot of movements in markets on Thursday and Friday here. Trump threatened a 35% tariff on some Canadian goods, also threatening increased blanket tariffs on the rest of the world. This comes on top of the announcement or the indications of massive tariffs on copper, etc. So, has Trump just restarted this whole trade discussion? Because I thought we had put this to bed, to be honest, Andreas.
Well, to some extent, yes, obviously. And, I'd like to start with a few very simple conclusions on this. We just talked about China and their ability to stimulate. I think China is one of the few countries that shouldn't be overly scared of this reignition of the trade war. Simply since they figured out that they had, quote unquote, an ace in the negotiations with Trump and the US, given these rare earth exports to the US. I think that was a part of the reason why Trump folded against China, that he got calls from executives right, left, and center saying, okay, we've got a month left of supplies, so you need, you simply need to make a U-turn. So I think China's in an okay position. I think China's a decent value bet here. I assumed a week ago that India was in a decent spot as well. Haven't heard much since. I've lost count of the times that Scott Bessent has gone on the wires stating that deals within 48 hours are expected, and then nothing happens. They just keep saying that, right? And maybe we should just expect no deals.
Yeah. Who cares about deals?
Yeah.
Could be the new line, or maybe August 1st is the new deadline, or maybe it's just letters. It's
So Mikkel, let me just read out aloud something that I wrote to our hedge fund clients, asking me what to expect from this new deadline. I wrote this. Perhaps the explanation for the lack of trade deals is simply that negotiating the details of such trade frameworks is cumbersome, medium to long-term work, something the Trump administration appears woefully unprepared to handle at the paragraph level. They're simply not prepared to write long, detailed trade deals. So at best, what we get is some, small letters of like memorandums of understanding on some very tangible stuff, such as cars or food or something like that. They're not, writing a big trade deal with India or China. It takes 5 years. I mean, it's not the kind of patience they have here.
No, Andreas. In Denmark, the phrase the hockey stick has become very, very popular. That is, you have a certain deadline to match some goal, and you stay mostly flat, and then boom, you make it right at the end. They haven't even done that. This reminds me of Andreas. You and I went to the same high school, and when I was in the final year of high school, I was called to the principal's office and say, okay, your grades are okay, your attendance is okay, but you're behind on these 7 or 8 reports. And then, I'm going to do those. I'm going to do all of those. And then you came back 14 days, 2 weeks later, I've done most of them. You're always lagging behind because new stuff is always coming. And it's, the hockey stick hasn't really materialized, to be honest here. But should we fear a new, should this induce new fear? You just sent me this chart on trade policy uncertainty because, as I mentioned, in my mind, this issue had more or less been put to rest. We were expecting some deals to be made. The China issue was solved. Do you think that this could instill new fears in the market?
I think there's, first of all, I think there's a fatigue in markets related to this topic. for good reasons. The second thing is that we see in price action right now that a lot of people had hoped for a deal with the EU and the deal with India, and nothing happening as we speak. Could obviously change. So at least for some countries, markets had high hopes. And yeah, we're currently lacking that momentum. But I am not worried that this derails what appears to be a cyclical upswing over the next 3 months. Then we'll have to go back to April 2nd levels, and we're very far from that still in terms of uncertainty. Remember that, one thing is to tax the consumer and the producer and the retailers via this tariffs setup. Another thing is to shock the whole confidence of the economy. And you probably cannot do that 2 times in a row. Let me just give you a piece of anecdotal evidence. First lockdown during COVID was a major deal for markets. Second time, not so much. Third time, who cares, right? So for markets to really sell off, you need a shock effect. And it is far from shocking right now. And, the chart we've brought with us here is a way of quantifying the uncertainty, and the uncertainty is still much, much lower than it was in April, but trending higher, given the headline hockey we've played since Thursday last week.
Yeah. Okay, Andreas, we'll get back into how to position for the summer period in the coming months here. But Andreas, speaking of fatigue, speaking of U-turns, I just want to touch upon this piece of news from this morning. That Trump has said to NBC News that he's planning a major statement on Russia on Monday. And obviously, as I said, we're recording this a few days in advance. So, but just laying out my analysis here. As I've alluded to, Trump has been friend-zoned by Vladimir Putin, essentially. He's been given just enough to keep his interest, to not seek out other women, if you follow that analogy. Again, heading back to high school, Andreas, we both know what that feels like, I suppose. And every time he's moving close to putting the screws in Russia, Putin has given him a phone call and reassured him. That might happen over the weekend. You should look out for that. Could happen early next week. But it seems to me that Trump has finally lost patience after 6 months of negotiations heading nowhere, and Trump having spent all this political capital. He was shouting at Zelensky. He was going to Europe. He was pressuring. He spent so much political capital in this, and Putin has done nothing to extend a hand to this. So it seems to me that Trump has finally lost patience with Vladimir Putin. They've tried everything to make a peace deal. They have forced Ukraine to accept very harsh terms, in my opinion, fair but harsh terms, and Putin is having none of it. There are a lot of reports that Russian economy is doing badly. They have very high inflation numbers. The growth is stagnant now. But that's to be expected in a war scenario. They can easily go on for a couple more years. The Ukrainians probably can't. So that strategic situation is still valid, and Trump hasn't been able to sort of shift that strategic situation and force Putin to negotiate. So what I think we'll see on Monday is, unless Putin gives him a call and keeps Trump in his friend zone, we're going to see the next step in this U-turn from Trump, which is increased weapon shipments to Ukraine. We have had some interruptions we haven't had a full halt to weapons shipments since Trump took office, but we haven't had any new waves. That's probably going to come, probably through NATO. And then we're looking at the big sanctions package that Lindsey Graham is getting voted through Congress right now. That might be the final piece of the puzzle to pull Putin to the negotiation table here. But let's see. As I said, the strategic situation is not very good. This is, in my opinion, still a huge embarrassment for Donald Trump and a situation they weren't probably prepared for. We have to acknowledge that. So let's see next week. Obviously, even though we're away, we'll stay on top of this if things develop. Andreas, should we move on to how to position for the next period? You already mentioned a couple of bets on China. I know you're looking at. You've been looking at healthcare financials as well. what's your take, if you had to put this simply to people, how to position over the next few months here?
As I said maybe 10 minutes ago, I think this is the kind of environment where you can have high beta stuff like Bitcoin, technology, etc., and commodities in your basket at the same time. Since China is in a good spot, they can stimulate. We're seeing a decent momentum in the business cycle, and typically when you go from say 48 in PMIs to plus 50, it's actually the exact zone where you see the most aggressive returns. So, despite all of this, it is so easy to allow this wall of worry to impact your decision making. But I think it would be misguided to do so, to be honest. As long as it doesn't really explode, and it doesn't appear to be exploding as we speak, at least, and therefore I'm still fairly upbeat, Leo. I'll have to admit to that. I did a full show on this political wall of worry and how to position in the pro tier here at Real Vision last week. So go have a look in case you're interested.
Absolutely. I think, Andreas, that's pretty much what we had for this week, our last episode, before we take a very short summer break and return to you in 2 weeks' time. Any final notes, Andreas, to the listeners here?
No, check my out of office. I'll see if I can write something funny.
Absolutely. And also, just as a final notice, as we talked about last week on the show, Steno Research, our business address, is merging completely now with Real Vision. So if you're an existing subscriber, please check out stenoresearch.com for more info on how to roll over your subscription to Real Vision, because that's where it's going to be at moving forward. That's where things are going to happen. Have a great summer out there. Have a great vacation, Andreas. I'll see you in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah. See you, Mikkel.
Thank you, guys. We'll be back.
Sometimes it may be good, sometimes it may be shit.
Today's video is sponsored by VeChain, the leading layer 1 built for real-world adoption. VeChain launched all the way back in 2015, built for real-world utility before most people had even heard of blockchain. One of the oldest protocols and boasting 100% uptime since launch, it's known for powering real-world solutions and partnerships with global brands like the UFC. Now, they're entering a new, user-focused chapter powered by adoption in the VBetter ecosystem and an ambitious technical roadmap dubbed the VeChain Renaissance. Renaissance builds on VeChain's history of real utility and adoption to deliver a faster, more flexible core protocol, designed to meet the needs of builders and drive mass adoption. The next phase kicks off on July 1st with the launch of Stargate, VeChain's new staking program. It's an evolution that brings VeChain closer to delivering its vision of a world powered by Web3 without compromising on reliability or stability. The future is here, and it's scalable, sustainable, and evolving with purpose. Check the links in the description to find out all you need to know about VeChain Renaissance and the updated staking opportunities available through Stargate.
Hey, thanks for sticking around to the end. Look, if you enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button and check out the video here on the right-hand side. I'm sure you'll enjoy that one as well. And if you're ready for more, go to realvision.com/join. I'll see you there.